Let me ask you something. Have you ever stared at your phone, wanting to text him, but stopped because you thought, if I text first, I'll ruin everything? What if I told you, the most powerful way to make him miss you has nothing to do with texting at all? Here's the truth no one tells you. Men don't miss you because you chase them. They miss you because they feel your absence. And absence is emotional, not digital. You don't make a man miss you by playing games, ignoring him, or pretending you don't care. And you definitely don't do it by sitting next to your phone, hoping he'll notice your silence. You make him miss you when you become the woman whose presence adds value to his life, and whose absence makes him feel that value disappear. Today, I'm going to show you how to make him think about you, crave your energy, and want to reach out, without texting first, without anxiety, and without losing your self-respect. Most people think that desire is created by doing more texting, more checking in, more reassurance, more effort. But attraction doesn't work that way. Desire isn't born from constant presence, it's born from contrast. It's the difference between when something is there and when it's not that makes the heart lean forward. Absence, when done correctly, creates space for emotion to grow, and that space is where longing lives. When you are always available, always responsive, always filling every silence, there is no room for curiosity. There is no room for imagination. There is no moment for someone to pause and think, I wonder what she's doing right now. Instead, you become predictable. Comfortable, yes, but comfort without mystery rarely fuels desire. Attraction needs a little oxygen, and absence is what lets it breathe. This doesn't mean disappearing, playing games, or punishing someone with silence. Healthy absence is not about withdrawal, it's about fullness. It's about having a life that doesn't orbit around waiting for someone else to choose you in that moment. When you are genuinely engaged in your own world, your goals, your friendships, your passions, you naturally create distance without forcing it. And that distance is powerful because it's authentic. Think about the last time you truly missed someone. It wasn't because they texted you every hour. It was because there was a moment when you felt their absence in your life. Maybe you wanted to share a win with them. Maybe you saw something that reminded you of them. Maybe there was a quiet moment where their presence would have made things better. That feeling didn't come from constant communication, it came from space. Men, in particular, often realize their feelings in the quiet moments. Not when you're right in front of them, explaining, reassuring, or over-giving, but when you're not there. When they notice the difference between life with you and life without you. Absence gives them the chance to connect the dots emotionally. It allows them to feel rather than react. If you remove absence, you remove that opportunity. When you're always initiating, always checking in, always making yourself available, you're doing the emotional work for them. You're filling the silence they need in order to feel something. And when someone doesn't get the chance to miss you, they don't get the chance to value you. There's also something deeply attractive about a person who doesn't collapse into availability. Someone who doesn't rush to respond out of fear. Someone who trusts that if a connection is real, it doesn't need to be constantly propped up. That confidence communicates self-worth without a single word. It says, I enjoy you, but I don't lose myself without you. And that energy is magnetic. Absence shifts the dynamic from chasing to choosing. When you're not constantly present, the other person has to decide whether they want to step forward. They have to invest. They have to reach. And investment is what creates attachment. We value what we work for. When someone has to initiate, has to wonder, has to take a step toward you, they emotionally engage in a way they never would if everything were handed to them. This is why texting less often, but with intention, can be more powerful than texting all day. A message that comes from a full, meaningful life lands differently than one sent out of boredom or anxiety. It carries weight, it feels chosen rather than automatic. And when communication feels chosen, it becomes more attractive. Absence also protects your emotional health. Constant availability often comes from fear, the fear of being forgotten, replaced, or losing momentum. But living in that fear puts your nervous system on high alert. You begin to measure your worth by response times and message length. Creating space gives you back control. It allows you to stay grounded, calm, and centered in yourself rather than reactive to someone else's behavior. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to be unforgettable through constant presence, you become unforgettable through impact. People don't remember the person who was always there. They remember the person whose presence changed how they felt. Absence sharpens that impact. It makes the moments you do share more meaningful, more charged, more real. So when you resist the urge to fill every gap, when you let silence exist, when you allow someone the chance to notice your absence, You're not losing ground, you're creating it. You're giving desire the space it needs to grow. You're allowing someone to miss you not because you vanished, but because your presence actually mattered. And that is the kind of absence that creates real attraction. Most people assume attraction grows through frequency. The more you talk, the more you connect. The more you explain yourself, the more understood you'll be. The more messages you exchange, the closer you must be getting. But real connection doesn't work on a numbers system. It doesn't grow because of how often you communicate. It grows because of how someone feels when they do. Emotional impact will always matter more than texting frequency, because emotions are what linger when the conversation ends. You can text someone all day and leave them feeling nothing. Or you can exchange a few meaningful moments and leave them thinking about you for hours. The difference isn't effort, it's presence. When communication is driven by anxiety, habit, or boredom, it becomes noise. When it's driven by intention and emotional attunement, it becomes memorable. And memorability is the foundation of attraction. Think about the messages you remember most in your life. They're rarely the routine check-ins or constant updates. They're the ones that made you feel seen, understood, challenged, or inspired. A single sentence can create more connection than 50 empty messages if it lands emotionally. Emotional impact is about how someone feels in your presence, not how often you announce that you're there. When people focus on frequency, they often start communicating out of fear. Fear that if they don't respond quickly, they'll lose interest. Fear that silence means disconnection. Fear that they need to keep things going at all costs. But fear-based communication is felt even if it's not spoken. It creates pressure instead of attraction. It asks for reassurance instead of inspiring curiosity. Emotional impact, on the other hand, comes from grounded energy. It comes from being fully present in the moment you share, without needing it to lead anywhere or prove anything. When you speak or text from that place, your words carry weight. They don't rush, they don't chase, they land. One of the biggest mistakes people make is over-communicating in an attempt to feel close. They explain too much, justify too much, update too much. But emotional closeness isn't built by volume. It's built by resonance. When someone feels emotionally met by you, even briefly, they feel closer than they ever would through constant surface-level contact. Men often respond more strongly to emotional experiences than to verbal consistency. A moment where they feel admired, respected, amused, or deeply understood will stay with them far longer than daily check-ins. Those moments create an emotional echo. Long after the conversation ends, the feeling remains. That echo is what pulls someone back toward you. When communication lacks emotional impact, frequency can actually work against you. Too much contact without depth can dilute attraction. It can make the connection feel flat or transactional. You become part of someone's routine instead of someone they're excited to hear from. And excitement is not built on habit, it's built on feeling. This is why stepping back from constant texting can sometimes strengthen attraction rather than weaken it. When communication is less frequent but more intentional, each interaction has space to breathe. There's anticipation, there's curiosity, there's room for the emotional experience to settle instead of being immediately overwritten by the next message. Emotional impact also requires vulnerability, not oversharing but authenticity. It means allowing moments of sincerity, playfulness, depth, or silence without rushing to fill them. It means being willing to let a conversation end on a high note instead of dragging it out to avoid disconnection. Ending with impact is far more powerful than continuing without purpose. Another key element of emotional impact is self-regulation. When you are calm and secure within yourself, your communication reflects that. You don't react impulsively. You don't send messages to soothe anxiety. You don't overanalyze every response. This emotional steadiness is deeply attractive because it makes others feel safe and relaxed around you. People are drawn to those who make them feel good about themselves when they interact, not pressured, not drained, not responsible for managing someone else's emotions. Emotional impact comes from leaving someone feeling lighter, more confident, more curious, not obligated to keep the conversation alive. There's also power in knowing when not to communicate. Silence can heighten emotional impact when it's natural and confident. It allows the other person to process how they feel. It gives them space to miss you, reflect on you, and initiate. Silence used wisely is not withdrawal, it's restraint, and restraint signals confidence. When you prioritize emotional impact over frequency, you stop trying to perform connection and start creating it. You focus less on being constant and more on being meaningful. You trust that the right connection doesn't fade because of a pause. It deepens because of what was felt before the pause. In the end, people don't fall for how often you message them. They fall for how you make them feel when you do. The laughter that lingers, the calm that settles, the spark that stays. Emotional impact is what turns communication into attraction, and that is why it will always matter more than how many texts you send. Most people think confidence is something you prove. They believe it's about saying the right things, acting unbothered, or announcing boundaries in a bold, dramatic way. But real confidence doesn't need a speech. It doesn't need explanation or validation. Confidence is not something you declare, it's something other people feel when they're around you. The moment you try to announce confidence, you often reveal insecurity. Explaining your worth, repeatedly stating what you deserve, or trying to appear unaffected all signal that you need the other person to believe it in order for it to be true. True confidence is quiet. It's calm. It doesn't rush to convince anyone of anything. Confidence shows up in how you respond, not in what you say. It's in the pauses you allow, the choices you make, and the energy you bring into interactions. A confident person doesn't panic when there's silence. They don't chase clarity immediately. They trust themselves enough to let things unfold without forcing an outcome. When you are confident, you don't need constant reassurance. You enjoy connection, but you don't cling to it. You're comfortable with uncertainty because you know you'll be okay regardless of how someone else behaves. That emotional self-sufficiency is deeply attractive because it removes pressure from the interaction. People feel freer around you, not burdened. One of the clearest signals of confidence is selectiveness. Confident people don't try to be liked by everyone. They don't over-adapt or shift to fit someone else's preferences. They observe, they respond, they decide. This doesn't mean being cold or detached. It means being intentional. You're not auditioning, you're evaluating. Confidence is also felt through boundaries that don't need defending. When you have to loudly explain your boundaries, it often means you're unsure of them yourself. When you're confident, your boundaries are expressed simply and upheld consistently. You don't argue them. You don't negotiate your standards to avoid losing someone. You trust that the right people will respect them. Another place confidence is felt is in emotional regulation. When something doesn't go your way, you don't spiral or overact. You might feel disappointed, but you don't collapse into self-doubt or chase reassurance. You process your emotions privately and respond thoughtfully. This steadiness communicates strength far more powerfully than any bold statement ever could. People often confuse confidence with dominance or indifference, but that's not it. Confidence allows warmth without attachment. You can be open, expressive, and affectionate without being needy. You can care deeply without losing your center. That balance is rare, and it's magnetic. Confidence is also felt in your willingness to walk away from what doesn't serve you. Not dramatically, not with ultimatums, simply with clarity. You don't stay where you're undervalued just to prove loyalty. You don't chase potential at the expense of your peace. This quiet self-respect speaks louder than any demand for better treatment. When someone interacts with you, they subconsciously ask one question: how does this person feel about themselves? If you feel settled within yourself, others feel it too. If you feel anxious and unsure, they feel that as well, no matter how polished your words are. Confidence is contagious because emotional states transfer. This is why trying to act confident often backfires. Confidence isn't a performance, it's a byproduct of trust in yourself. Trust that you're enough without forcing connection. Trust that you can handle rejection. Trust that you don't need to be chosen to be worthy. When that trust is present, your behavior naturally changes. You stop over-texting. You stop over-explaining. You stop trying to manage how you're perceived. You allow yourself to be seen as you are without controlling the narrative. And paradoxically, that lack of control makes you far more compelling. Confidence also shows up in joy. Confident people allow themselves to enjoy moments without worrying about where things are going. They don't rush intimacy to secure outcomes. They don't withhold pleasure to appear powerful. They're present. That presence makes interactions feel real rather than strategic. A fulfilled life is one of the most magnetic qualities a person can have, and yet it's something many of us overlook when trying to attract someone or maintain a connection. When people talk about attraction, they often focus on what you do for someone else: the texts, the calls, the constant availability, the small acts meant to remind them of your presence. But here's the truth: no amount of effort can replace the power of a life that is already full, rich, and vibrant on its own. Being fulfilled is about cultivating a life that you don't need someone else to complete. It's about living in such a way that your joy, purpose, and growth radiate naturally, and that energy becomes irresistible to others. A fulfilled person doesn't define themselves by whether someone reaches out or thinks of them. They have hobbies, passions, and goals that occupy their mind and spirit. They pursue things that excite them, challenge them, and give them meaning. That pursuit makes them dynamic. They aren't waiting around for validation. They are actively living. And that energy, whether you realize it or not, is magnetic because it communicates that life with you is inherently interesting and rewarding. Fulfillment also creates confidence. When you have a life that you're proud of, you don't need someone else to remind you of your worth. You're not anxious about whether someone notices or misses you because you already know what you bring to the table. You carry yourself differently. You move with a sense of purpose, not desperation. That purposefulness is felt by everyone around you. It doesn't have to be stated, it's evident in how you interact with the world. People are drawn to someone who doesn't seek approval, but instead inspires curiosity and admiration. When your life is full, absence no longer feels like a threat. A fulfilled person doesn't panic when someone doesn't text back immediately. They don't obsess over every detail of communication. Why? Because their sense of happiness, value, and accomplishment doesn't hinge on someone else's attention. That kind of independence is incredibly attractive because it removes the pressure that often accompanies relationships. Instead of making someone feel like they must constantly chase you, a fulfilled life gives them space to want to be with you naturally. A fulfilled life also creates depth in interactions. When you engage with someone from a place of abundance rather than lack, your conversations are richer, more engaging, and more memorable. You're able to share experiences, ideas, and passions rather than relying on small talk or seeking validation. You don't over-explain yourself because you have clarity about who you are and what you value. This clarity allows others to see the full picture of your personality, not just a curated version designed to please them. And people are naturally drawn to authenticity. Nothing is more magnetic than someone who is unapologetically themselves. Fulfillment isn't just about individual pursuits, it's about emotional resilience too. A fulfilled person has learned to navigate life's highs and lows without losing their center. They experience challenges, but they don't collapse under them. They take setbacks in stride and grow from them. This emotional strength communicates stability and reliability, qualities that are deeply attractive. When someone senses that you are emotionally grounded, they feel safe and comfortable around you. Safety fosters intimacy, and intimacy fosters desire. Another powerful aspect of a fulfilled life is that it creates anticipation. When you are engaged in your own world, your presence becomes something to be noticed. Your time is valuable, and you spend it thoughtfully. People begin to recognize that when you do show up, it's intentional and meaningful. This intentionality makes your presence feel precious and your absence felt. The paradox is simple: by fully living your own life, you make others want to be part of it, not because they need you, but because they see the richness you already bring. Fulfillment also cultivates joy, and joy is contagious. When you are passionate about your life, whether it's your career, hobbies, friends, or personal growth, that positive energy radiates outward. It's impossible to ignore. People are naturally drawn to those who make life feel exciting and vibrant. They want to be around someone who is thriving, who smiles from a place of contentment, and who approaches life with enthusiasm. This joy doesn't need to be forced. It's the natural byproduct of living a life that matters to you. Living a fulfilled life also means maintaining boundaries that protect your energy. You don't overextend yourself to please others or constantly chase attention. You recognize that your time, energy, and emotions are valuable. This self-respect is visible in your actions, and it reinforces your worth. When you hold yourself to standards that prioritize your well-being and growth, others can't help but respect and desire you. You signal that you are not easily swayed or taken for granted, which strengthens both your self-confidence and your attractiveness. Fulfillment also encourages curiosity in others. When you have interests, experiences, and insights to share, you spark curiosity. People want to know what you're thinking, what you're creating, what excites you. You are no longer just a presence, they want to understand your world, to connect with the energy you carry. That curiosity naturally deepens engagement without forcing it. It moves relationships away from obligation and into genuine interest. Finally, a fulfilled life teaches patience. When your happiness and identity are rooted in your own pursuits, you don't need immediate validation or constant attention. You can allow connections to evolve at their natural pace. You understand that meaningful relationships are built over time, and you're willing to let desire grow organically. By living fully, you create the conditions where someone truly misses you, not because of games or manipulation, but because your life is so rich and engaging that your absence is deeply noticed. In essence, a fulfilled life is magnetic because it communicates that you are whole, independent, and vibrant. You are not defined by someone else's attention, approval, or affection. Instead, you define yourself by your passions, your growth, and the joy you create in your own life. That authenticity, depth, and energy are what make people not just notice you, but want to be a part of your world. By living fully, you don't just attract attention, you create desire, respect, and lasting emotional connection. Being fulfilled is not about perfection, it's about creating a life that feels meaningful to you, carrying yourself with confidence, and allowing your presence to impact others naturally. When you achieve that, attraction happens effortlessly because people are drawn not to someone who needs them, but to someone who lights up their own life in ways that inspire, intrigue, and excite. Letting him invest before you initiate is one of the most overlooked principles in attraction, yet it's one of the most powerful ways to create genuine desire and emotional connection. Many people approach relationships with the mindset that they need to do all the work, sending the first text, making plans, asking questions, and constantly showing attention. But when you always initiate, you shift the dynamic from mutual engagement to a one-sided effort, and that often diminishes attraction. Real connection is not built on constant giving, it is built on balance, effort, and investment. When you allow him to take the lead, you create an environment where desire can grow naturally because he has to choose to engage, care, and make an effort for you. Investment is fundamentally about emotional energy. When someone invests in a relationship, they are putting their attention, effort, and emotional resources into something that matters to them. The more someone invests, the more they value the outcome. This is not manipulation, it's simply human psychology. People tend to value what they work for. When you initiate every conversation, every plan, every interaction, you remove the opportunity for him to invest. You make it effortless for him, and as a result, the connection becomes less meaningful. Allowing him to take initiative shifts the balance, giving him the chance to demonstrate care, effort, and attention. Allowing him to invest also encourages accountability. When you don't constantly fill in the gaps, he has to make choices. He has to decide if he wants to reach out, plan time together, or show appreciation. That decision-making process is crucial because it signals whether he truly values the connection. When someone has to invest, they become more intentional. They stop taking your presence for granted and start actively engaging in the relationship. The effort he makes reflects his feelings, his priorities, and his willingness to show up. This principle also protects your self-respect and emotional energy. When you're always the one initiating, you subconsciously tie your value to his responses. You begin to monitor whether he texts back quickly, whether he seems interested, whether he makes time for you. This creates anxiety and imbalance. By letting him invest first, you reclaim your emotional power. You stop chasing validation and start assessing whether his actions match his words. You no longer feel like your worth depends on constant effort from your side. Another important aspect of allowing him to invest is that it fosters curiosity and anticipation. When someone knows that you don't always initiate, they begin to wonder about you. They begin to notice your absence and consider what you're doing, thinking about you without constant reminders. That curiosity is a natural form of attraction. People desire what they must pay attention to, and when you create a space for him to take action, you make him step up emotionally. That step is what deepens interest, creates longing, and strengthens emotional attachment. Letting him invest also encourages a more balanced dynamic in the relationship. When effort is mutual, both people feel seen, valued, and respected. It creates an environment where connection is based on genuine desire rather than obligation. When one person constantly initiates, the relationship can feel imbalanced, with one person carrying the weight of maintaining connection. This imbalance can lead to resentment or disinterest over time. By letting him take the first step, you foster equality, mutual respect, and shared responsibility for the relationship. It's also important to note that letting him invest does not mean you withdraw completely or play games. It's not about being cold, manipulative, or passive-aggressive. It's about stepping back and allowing him the chance to show interest, effort, and desire naturally. It's about creating space for him to express how much he values you. The difference between investment and manipulation is clarity. Investment is earned through authenticity, not by withholding or pretending to be unavailable. When you allow him to invest, you also gain insight into his intentions and priorities. Actions speak louder than words. The way he chooses to engage with you reveals a lot about his character, his interest level, and his commitment potential. If he consistently invests, it demonstrates genuine desire. If he rarely steps forward, it shows where he stands emotionally. By observing his investment, you gain clarity without forcing him to prove anything through conversation or constant prompting. Another reason this principle is so powerful is that it naturally builds attraction through effort. Effort creates emotional attachment. When someone works for something meaningful, they feel more connected to it. In relationships, emotional attachment grows when someone experiences the process of seeking, valuing, and appreciating another person. If everything is handed to him on a silver platter, attention, affection, plans, emotional labor, the sense of achievement, investment, and attachment never develops. Letting him invest gives him that opportunity, and that opportunity strengthens desire. It also reinforces your own boundaries and standards. By waiting for him to invest first, you communicate that your attention, time, and energy are valuable. You set a standard for how you expect to be treated. You're showing that you are not going to compromise yourself, respect, or constantly chase someone who may not prioritize you. This boundary is inherently attractive because people are drawn to those who respect themselves and hold high standards. It signals confidence, maturity, and independence. Finally, letting him invest before you initiate creates a sense of partnership rather than dependency. Relationships thrive when both people are active participants in building the connection. By allowing him to invest, you foster engagement, mutual desire, and shared emotional responsibility. You move away from the exhausting dynamic of always being the initiator and instead cultivate a relationship where both people feel valued, appreciated, and motivated to show up. This is the kind of dynamic that fosters long-term attraction, emotional connection, and respect. In essence, allowing him to invest before you initiate is not about control, it's about balance, clarity, and emotional intelligence. It creates space for desire to grow naturally, fosters mutual respect, strengthens emotional attachment, and protects your self-worth. It shifts the relationship from a one-sided effort into a dynamic where both parties actively contribute, and that is where true connection, longing, and attraction are born. When you practice this principle, you are not only empowering him to show who he truly is, but you are also empowering yourself to maintain your standards, energy, and emotional independence, which is ultimately irresistible. So, let's bring this all together. Making him miss you isn't about constant texting, playing games, or bending yourself to get attention. It's about creating a presence that is felt even when you're not there. It's about understanding that absence, emotional impact, confidence, a fulfilled life, and allowing him to invest first are the real keys to attraction. When you let space exist, you give him the chance to notice your value. When you focus on emotional impact, you make every interaction meaningful and unforgettable. When you embody confidence, you radiate strength without having to say a word. When you live a fulfilled life, you naturally become magnetic. And when you allow him to invest first, you invite him to show desire, effort, and care, which deepens connection in a way nothing else can. This is not about manipulation or control. It's about understanding human psychology, owning your worth, and stepping fully into your power. It's about creating a dynamic where he chooses to want you, not because you chase him, but because he feels the pull of your presence, your energy, and your life. So, the next time you feel the urge to text first, to over-explain, to chase, pause. Ask yourself, am I adding value to this connection, or am I filling the space he should be investing in himself? When you do this, something incredible happens. You stop giving your power away, you start creating attraction naturally, and you become unforgettable. Remember, desire is created in the space between two people. You are not chasing, it's about being someone whose absence is noticed, whose presence is treasured, and whose life is so full that others are drawn to it. Live fully, love yourself, and let the rest follow. And that, my friends, is how you make him miss you without ever needing to text first.